Think we're there. Haley, thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited to have you, and I'm so excited to talk about mastering cash flow because I know this is something that I struggle with, and so many other entrepreneurs struggle with as well. So, why don't you give us just a quick introduction of who you are and how you help your people?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to today for like forever. So I'm really, really excited to be here. So my name is Haley. It's spelled a little different, but don't let that take you back. It's Geily, but it's just Haley. And I am a fractional CFO and financial consultant. We'll go deeper into what that means in a little later. I help six-figure service-based business owners master, manage, and multiply their cash flow because I believe that money will manage changes lives. And that's literally my synopsis right there. That's my motto.
Okay, so let's dive into specifically what like your title because I think, and tell me if you feel otherwise because you're definitely the expert, but I think there are kind of like three sets of people in the business space when it comes to finances. You've got people who are just like overwhelmed totally by it. They feel like they're not good at it. Just absolutely knows, period. You've got people who feel like you, right? Who are like, I'm great. I love it. I'm an expert. I've got
Mhm.
this. And then I feel like you've also got people in the middle who are, and I fall into this category with personal finances. Great. I am all over it. I love it. But then I get to business finances and it feels so different and so overwhelming. And this cash flow piece is the piece that I struggle with most. It's not the same as personal finances, right? And so I feel like there are kind of like three tiers of people in the business space as far as finances and monetary things. Um, But I think there are a lot of us who, when you say like I'm a financial consultant, like what does that mean? So give us a synopsis of like what is it exactly that you do?
Yeah. So the easiest way for me to explain it is usually when you're thinking about a financial consultant or a fractional CFO, that is the strategy piece. That is the cash flow, like the financial like strategy behind it all. So think of a bookkeeper. Usually when you work with a bookkeeper, they do your books and they just give you like a P&L at the end of the month. And that's always looking back. When you work with your tax accountant, that's the person that you usually go to. Maybe you meet with them once or twice a year and you file your taxes and you just ask tax related questions, but there isn't like the overall like, hey, how is my business doing? How can I maximize my profit? Where are my expenses going? Like why did I make so much money top line, but why can't I pay myself? Why is, so much of these expenses going to contractors? Like where is the missing link here? That missing link is that fractional CFO or financial consultant person that takes like the bookkeeping piece that's looking back. They look forward as well. And then there is the tax component to it. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. So all of that, let me know if that explains it, but that's the
Yeah.
easiest way that I can think of because there is really three different people. And a lot of times people know the bookkeeper and the tax accountant, and they don't know that there is like this middle person that is, there to help you with like the ongoing day-to-day, figuring out, strategizing, deciphering what the finances mean for your business specifically and how to grow forward.
Yeah, okay. That makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, what are some of these strategies that you help people what does that missing link look like in practice, I guess is what I'm
Mhm.
asking.
Yeah, so a lot of times we start with where you're at. So we start with a beginning starting point. And a lot of times that means we look at the book. So we look at what the bookkeeper has done, or if there isn't a bookkeeper, we clean them up and we figure out what does that mean so that we can have a starting point. And then from there, we look at, okay, planning forward, what do you want to achieve in your business? What does success look like for you? What type of revenue, what type of profit, which is not what a lot of people think about. They think about top line. And then really cash flow is that middle, like messy piece that it's like, yeah, this much came in, but what happened to it? So we don't just focus on revenue, we focus on profit too. And we say, okay, what does that profit look like? So we talk about margins, we talk about expenses, we talk about forecasting and projecting and budgeting and like all of these moving pieces that really ties it all together. And then we look at like a little bit of tax strategy as well. We work with our inner circle to find like a tax accountant that can work with us and our clients, and so it is a lot of moving pieces, but overall, we look back and then we look forward, which is different from the tax accountant and the bookkeeper. Usually both of those are just looking back.
Mhm. So when it comes to cash flow, because I think this is like a super common
Yeah.
issue, right? Where we're making money, but we're like, you
Where
know,
my money go?
yeah, like where is it? Or just like, oh, I need to pay this bill, but I don't have anything in the bank right now. Or um paying myself has become a challenge. Like these are all such common things. Is it as simple as just increasing profit margins, or is there more to mastering cash flow than just
Yeah, that's a really loaded question, but I'll
that?
try to simplify
Okay.
it. My whole idea is to make finances simple. So I will absolutely try to simplify it. Maximizing like, you know, getting more like profit margins, increasing your profit margins, that is a piece of it. But the easiest way to put it is if you don't have, you know how people say like more sales doesn't actually fix the problem or more money doesn't actually fix the problem. The reason behind that is because there isn't a system in place so that when more money comes in, it still renders everything else. Think of it like if you are making 100,000 and your bills like personally are like 90,000. You're like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and get 150,000." Then you bring up your bills again to 140,000. Then you're constantly like on this like show call of like I can't survive like because you're increasing your bills as you're increasing how much you make and so you're not leaving any room. Same thing in business. If you are just making more money and then you're spending more, then there's just not enough room. So, yes, increasing your profit margins, which means that you are keeping less, like you're having less expenses and you're bringing in more money, that does help. But essentially, I like to have a system in place for that. We actually just did a master class in the Profitable Circle, which is a community that I host. And it was about maximizing profits with what's left of the year. So we started thinking about what does looking, where is our starting point? What does Q1 and Q2 look like? And then we thought about what does Q3 and Q4 need to look like to maximize our profits, so not just top line. And then we set up a system around as money comes in, where is it going? And you're telling that money where it needs to go and we're doing that based on percentages so that as more money comes in, more money is being allocated. Not because you're doing it manually and you're saying, oh, $100 if I'm making 150. No, you're doing it percentage wise. So the more you're making, the more that you're putting towards those specific goals or bank accounts or whatever the case may be. So there has to be a system in place, not just the idea of I'm going to increase my profit margins because that sounds beautiful, but there is no system in place. It's a lot harder to do.
Okay, so tell me more about the system. Obviously, I know it'll be different for every single business, but what are some of the different things that you could allocate percentage-wise money to?
Yeah, so the system is, I don't know if you've heard of Profit First. It is, yeah, okay, so it's derived a little bit from there. A lot of times when people think of Profit First, they're like, it's so overwhelming. I tried it and it's like 20 bank accounts and I just couldn't keep up and this and that. I get it. So I recommend the book for the main idea, not so
Mhm.
much the specifics to it. And I do a very like modified version of it. And by modified means I take every client at like what their business is and how their business needs to be set up. So we ran through like four basic bank accounts, like operating expenses is one of them, tax savings, because we got to have money for taxes, whether that's estimated tax payments or paying for a tax bill at the end of the year or having reserves because your business has to have reserves. The easiest way that I can explain reserves is the way that you have savings in your personal life. Something happens and you're like, oh, that's good that I have this in here. Something breaks in your house or you have an expense or whatever, something that was not planned. If that happens in your business, that's where reserves come in. So we need to have reserves. So that's the third. And then the fourth is owner's pay. So you have your owner's pay that you work towards. And as long as you're telling your money where to go into those bank accounts, then it's easier for you to say, okay, this much is for paying my expenses, this much is for paying my taxes, as opposed to having one bank account and saying, oh, I have $20,000. I'm going to pay myself $10,000 this month. And in
Mhm.
reality, you don't have 20,000. And that's how we fall into the feast and famine, because then the next month, you're probably not going to have $20,000 again, right? And now you're like trying to survive because you made such a big payment or like such a big draw to yourself out of what you thought was like so much money. If you would have really split that up and you would have said, well, out of those 20,000, this much belongs here, this much belongs there. Oh, okay, so I really should just pay myself for because that's really where things should be
Mm.
because expenses are coming out, and all these things. So we do set up a system so that that is a little bit more controlled.
Okay. And then what do you like, what is your suggestion as far as percentages? Do you have like a range for each that you suggest, or what does that typically look like?
Yeah, so usually the first thing I do is I recommend Relay Bank. I love them because I work with, like, that's the bank that I bank with, and a lot of my clients do as well, because they are the only, as far as I know, the only profit first bank, which means that they have that rule on auto. So you could literally set up the bank accounts and say this much here, this much there, without you actually having to do it. And you could say every month, every week, whatever, and it has like a minimum balance. So if you're like, I do not want my expenses to fall below my operating account to fall below this, like let's say $2,000, if making those transfers will make that expense, like that account go below that, it will not transfer for you. So it avoids that like overdraft. So I love that. That is my very, very first thing. And as far as percentages, I always say start small. The idea is to set up the system, not to be like, well, I'm going to put 75% into savings. And then it's like, yeah, and then you overdraft because you didn't pay your expenses. So start small. You could do 5% profit, 15 or 20% for taxes. And then, and also another big thing with this is within the Mastering Cash Flow Guide, which we can talk more about later, there's an expense audit. As you're setting up your operating account, it is really important to start with that expense audit so that you know what amount that operating account has to have. That's not the account for you to have overflow in. That's the account for you to have just enough and keep it in check. So if your operating expenses after you do that expense audit is $2,000 a month, you know that that's what you need to have. Anything above that should be distributed into the other bank accounts. So you could do, again, 5% for profit, 10, 15%, or 15, 20 for taxes, and then the rest over to your owner's pay. And the more that you set this up, you're able to say, oh, okay, I didn't pay myself as much as I wanted to. Okay, that means I need to increase sales because I already audited my expenses. And it's not that it's going into all different directions, it's that I need to increase profit. So bringing it back to, should we just increase profit margins? No, it's not that simple.
Okay, okay. So we want to audit the expenses and
Yeah.
figure out what we need. And that actually was going to be my next question was how do you know what your minimum balance
Yeah.
should be? So using you've got a free cash flow guide, right? Tell us about that and how people can access it.
Yeah, so that has like three parts. One, it's a guide. So it's going to tell you, it's going to help you figure out like, where am I today, cash flow level. So we have level 1, 2, 3, 4, and then where do I want to be in 3 to 9 months from now? And so that's really good for you to be like, okay, I want to be in this, this level because I am at this level right now. I'm in level 1. I want to be in level 2 or level 3. And then it gives you steps for like, okay, this is what you should do. It talks about, you know, cash flow problems and how to fix them. And then it also has two spreadsheets or one spreadsheet, two tabs. One is the expense audit and it goes monthly, quarterly, and yearly. So that way those like annual subscriptions don't like sneak up on you. So it has that. You're able to do that. And then the other side of that is a cash flow tracker. So you're able to put in for the next month, this is how much money is going to be coming in, how much money is going to be going out. And then these are my percentages that I am going to allocate. If you see on paper that you're not bringing enough, you'll see that negative, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, so next month I should be working on this, or I should be reducing my expenses, or maybe I don't have enough right now to do such a high owner's pay, or I need to generate more sales. So everything kind of works together. It's a really, really great guide.
Okay, tell me more about the cash flow levels. You said there were three of them. What
Yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah, there's four of them. So basically, everyone's at a level. So even at the very beginning, let's say that you're starting and you're actually funding the business. So the business doesn't have any money to fund itself. Then level two could be like you have enough money to pay for the business expenses, but you don't have enough to like save for taxes or bills or even pay yourself. Then you could have enough to pay your expenses and your taxes, maybe save a little, but you still don't have enough to pay yourself. And then at the very end, that's when you're like, all right, I'm a good cash flow level where the business can pay me, it can pay its expenses, it can have reserves, it can have taxes. So we go into levels because it's very hard to do everything at once. And that's something that a lot of people don't really get. It's like we just try to go like super excited. I'm just gonna do all of it. And then we realize, and then we burn out. And then we realize that wasn't really a great strategy. So I like to see it in levels so that you start to think like, okay, I am here where I am funding my business to get all of my expenses paid. I would like to be at level two where I no longer have to do that and the business can at least sustain itself. Okay, cool. What do I have to do to get there? So I do see it in levels in that way.
Okay, that's fascinating. And we can all get more details about that in the guide, right?
Yeah, the guy takes the levels and it explains them, it breaks them down, and then it also gives you like, okay, these are pricing strategies. So pricing per profit is a really big thing for me, where you actually take into account all of the expenses that will be like within that price. A lot of times we talk about pricing and we don't actually account for all of the expenses, and that eats up at our profit margins before we even get to pay ourselves or pay for expenses or save for taxes. And so I want you to be able to price for profit before you're even thinking about pricing. Oh, this $97 sounds good. Yeah, let's throw that number out there. No, it's not about that.
Okay, okay. So we want to get a full picture
Yeah.
of our money, right? Where it's going, what it's doing.
Hmm.
We want to set up these bank accounts so that we are putting percentages and allocating our money. We
Yeah.
want to make sure that we know what our expenses are and how much we need each month minimum.
Yeah.
And then we also want to price for profit. Is there anything else that we should really be paying attention to or working towards?
I think that if you start there, that is a really great like universal way for every business. Every other business will, every business is different. So there may be a business that has inventory, there may be a business that has payroll, there may be a business that has debt. So those are more complex and those would be probably taken like case by case. But overall, every business should know how many how many expenses. Every business should know like what cash flow level they're at and how to get from one to another. Every business should know, the system of like just prioritizing these bank accounts to not just have everything in one place. That's something that could apply universally. And then as businesses grow, there's just more complex situations, but this kind of gives us a good starting point.
Okay. And then, so once you have, here's where I get tripped up. I don't know if anyone else feels like this too, but I've got the bank accounts, right? I allocate my money, and yet sometimes I still feel like, and I don't know if maybe, sorry, I'm like thinking ahead. I still end up situations where I'm like, oh, I don't have the money I need. Maybe it's that I don't know my minimum balance. Maybe that's the missing piece. I'm also curious how you feel about annual subscriptions. Do you think it's better to save the money and get the annual subscription because typically there's like, it's cheaper? Or is it better to just do the monthly subscriptions so that you always know I need X amount and there's no big amounts coming out any given month? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it depends. If it's a subscription that you're like, yeah, there's no way that I'm going to let this go in the next like 2, 3 years or whatever, and maybe the annual subscription has, a bigger discount than doing it monthly, that could be a perk, right? But cash flow wise, I think that you need to say, okay, can I really afford to pay, I don't know, 400, $500 in any given month right now? And if the answer is no, then maybe you should continue to do monthly. If you have it and you're like, yeah, there's no way I'm letting go of this and I'm actually going to be saving more money, then go ahead and do it, especially towards the end of the year. I actually just had a call earlier today about that. And so later towards the end of the year, it's like, okay, you know what? This could be a really great tax write-off. So oftentimes I pay for my business insurance all at once at the end of the year. For the next year, I don't actually have to like that actually frees up cash flow for me on a monthly basis because
Mm,
I no longer have to pay that on a monthly basis. But it's because I had that money to be able to pay it. It wasn't that I was putting a strain on my business just to get a tax write-off, you know?
right.
So it's like checks and balances. I want you to be cash flow ready and not just like, oh, I'm gonna do this and like just get the tax write-off. And then you're like, oh man, really shouldn't have done that. I should have just stayed with the monthly payments. So you got to check both of those things to kind of like check off the boxes and say, okay, this is a good idea, or should I do this instead?
So basically, this kind of thing is exactly why we need a strategist, right? Why we need you.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us, you mentioned earlier you have a membership for those that are not quite ready to jump full in one-on-one. Tell us about the membership, what it is, and how they can kind of get a taste of some of that individual strategy that is possibly the missing link for them.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So the community is called the Profitable Circle, and it's like the step up from you actually taking the freebie. You're like, I've downloaded the Mastering Cash Flow Guide, I'm there, and now I need support at a higher level. And so you get me in a group setting, but you still get me, and you still get to ask questions. You still get a masterclass from me every month. And my idea with doing this community and making it something that people actually want to join is I did not find anything that kind of brought together all the three like disciplines. So for instance, there's a lot of like bookkeeping communities for bookkeepers or like for bookkeepers to become bookkeepers. There's tax related for tax strategy and tax things and stuff like that. I haven't found one where it's bookkeeping, cash flow, financial strategy, and tax all in one. Mine is because I am a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a fractional CFO. So I've already dealt in like all of those three places. And so I'm able to speak to all of those three. And so my community is that. And then what I try to do is I try to think ahead and I'm saying, what is coming up for, the people in this community and what are they needing? So next month we're doing a master class on estimated tax payments because estimated tax payments are due September 15th. So also the one big beautiful bill just passed earlier this month, and that is a huge topic. And a lot of times people are like overwhelmed by it and they don't know how it affects their business. So we're tackling that in because it's already a tax master class. So I'm doing a high level overview of the OBBB. So those are the type of things that I'm like, what's coming up around October? Oh, we're thinking about the holidays. All right, let's talk about how do you prepare for a slower season, because a lot of times the clients I work with, it's not like they're gonna have, they're not a store where like that is peak season for them. They're actually like in the holidays, like that is slow season for them. They're barely making any money, bringing money in. They're getting ready for those like slower sales because people are on vacation. They're not fully in their business, but taking time off. That's usually what happens. So I'm kind of thinking ahead, and then I'm putting a master class together, and then I'm doing that monthly, and then I'm doing monthly like Q&A coaching calls. So you're able to bring your questions, say, hey, I'm working on this, or I'm struggling with this in my business. And you also have the community that you can post, and there's people in there that are probably going through the same things that you're going through or have gone through themselves. So you don't just get support from me, but you get support from others. So you don't feel so lonely, especially in finances. There's no judgment. It's like a judgment-free zone. It's only encouragement, clarity. I try not to talk with a lot of jargon or, try to make it boring. I try to just keep things light and give you strategy, give you clarity, and just kind of like bring everything together.
Yeah, amazing.
Mhm.
And we will link to that and the Mastering Cash Flow Guide in the show notes for everyone. You also have a special code, right, for
I do, I
listeners?
do. So if they use the code Amanda, they'll get the first month for free into the community. So that'll be really, really great. And the very first masterclass in the community, so depending on when you're listening to this, the first masterclass was in July. The first masterclass went into exactly what we just covered here, figuring out how to maximize your profits. So we looked at Q1 and Q2, we looked at Q3 and Q4, and then we set up that system. And I spoke a little bit about relay, and I spoke a little bit about the percentages and how to do, I went with a follow through example so that you could see yourself in this follow through example. I call it the ABA, and you could see yourself in ABA and kind of walk through it. There's a follow along worksheet that comes with the masterclass. So like if you're joining at a later date, you can go back and catch that replay and like literally see it for those that are visual.
Amazing. Now, I don't let anyone get out of here without two things. First, an action step. So if you could give everyone one simple action step this week to help master their cash flow, what would it be?
So definitely if you don't have a bookkeeper or any type of financial like record keeping, that would be my first step because a lot of everything that we do comes from that. If you don't have records, like financial records, it's going to be very hard for you to have clarity and visibility for moving forward. So you got to have a starting point, and even in the masterclass, we talked about a starting point and we're like, even if you don't have records, I need you to use a spreadsheet. I need you to use a CRM. I need you to use anything so that you're starting. That's not where you're going to stay, but at least that's where you're starting, right? So if you don't have records of some sort, if you don't work with a bookkeeper, if you don't work with someone like me, you could have, that would be my first step so that you can get on the path to having that. And if you do have, records and you're like, I still feel kind of lost and I still feel kind of overwhelmed, then I would recommend joining the community because that's a very like low ticket item that at least will get you started and it will get you a little bit of strategy rather than going full force into working with a CFO.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second thing that I don't let anyone get away without is giving a book recommendation. So it can be business related, but it certainly does not have to be. But what is one book that you just think everyone needs to read?
Um, I touched a little on Profit First, but just to make it a different book, I would say 10x is easier than 2x. I really liked it for just kind of like realizing how you can scale your business in a way where you don't have to work as hard. So instead of saying, I'm gonna just have 100 clients, and if I have 50 now I just gotta double that. Maybe that's not realistic, right? And then maybe you just say, how can I make more without like having all of that hard work. So it's about working smarter than working harder. So I really like that one. And again, take the main idea, not necessarily all the steps or the minutia, but take the main idea and then run with it.
Yeah, I haven't read that one, so I'm gonna add that to my list right now.
Yeah. I just listened to it maybe like a month ago, and it's really, really great.
Amazing. Haley, thank you so much for being here today and
Yeah.
helping us simplify this idea of cash flow and how to just make sure that we're, being really good stewards of the revenue and the profit in our own businesses.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I loved it.